What's going on, guys? I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of We Out Here. So, it's been a long time coming. There's been a lot of things, I guess, that I've been drawn to or led to speak about, and I tend to do that in my own way, so I'm just being more direct with it. I hope this message reaches who it needs to reach, and I hope, even though with the ominous music choice, I'm not a doom and gloomer, but I just hope that it's received as information, useful information. So right now I'll begin with, I'm tasked with telling all of you that there is some great danger afoot. It's clear to even the least spiritually inclined of us that we are beyond a breaking point with the function of this reality in our society, in our communities. The forces that are guiding this journey are pushing us to a destination that they deem fit, and mostly for the continuation of their plans and agenda. So, a good question to ask is, what are those forces? And we should notice that we're not asking who. It should also be pretty clear that there is no longer a who to question, but most certainly a what. If we use our strengths, one of those being observation, it's pretty clear, no matter how popularized or mainstream it seems, that we find ourselves in a construct of some sort. It's pretty self-evident. There's all kinds of different theories and perceptions, but it definitely comes down to a mindset, sometimes a horror of facing this truth. Whether we have a hopeful outlook or whether it seems unsettling, realizing that observation, usually it pushes us into using our mental capabilities in one way or another. We're able to either actively veil this realization as best that we can from ourselves, choosing what we want to reveal in our daily life or our daily experience, or openly accepting these observations and then using our mental capabilities to help veil it from those that we love, some of those around us, whether they be our fellow inmates or our little ones. So through this observation, though, while the mechanical and artificial aspects of our current situation become more clear and clear, it should be observable that there is also this unexplainable, uncontrollable variable that is present. People identify that as many things. Sometimes they identify it outside themselves. They are seeing phenomena or glitches. And some of us identify it with ourselves. And we may refer to that as our, us being a glitch, or, kind of like a ghost in the shell type of concept. All right. Personally, I identify this variable, this glitch. I identify it with the true spirit, with God. That is source. That is source from which all is imitated from. While our daily interaction with the mechanical and cyclical nature of our existence has led many of us to become much like the foundations of our earth, right? Enduring erosion from unnecessary and forced suffering, untold traumas, right? Causing us to be layered with an emotional sediment depositing over us and our loved ones. And now that sometimes can end with our minds being numbed, our hearts being hardened, to the point that our ability to perceive this essence, this phenomena, this glitch, seems non-existent. It can even affect our hope that it is even still present at all within our existence. That glitch, that phenomena, that is not an external event. That essence is us. In the way that we observe it, we may observe it external to us and then say, that was weird. Or did you see that? How did that happen? That doesn't make sense. But essentially, it wasn't so much that you viewed something, it was that your presence there was what caused that to happen. And now you may never have a deeper understanding of why or what actually happened for you to view that. But that glitch, that essence, that true spirit, God, that has never been something for us to find outside of ourself. That phenomena, that spirit, that is what this construct seems to be attempting to isolate and extract. But all attempts at that are failed. There is a carefully crafted pressure used to terraform our consciousness, pushing us toward an attempt at absolute domination of our human will. That phenomena, that essence, that glitch. The machine has not and will continue to be unable to harvest this essence. What the machine seems capable of doing is hoodwinking those of us that recognize we possess it. And the hoodwink, they get us to corrupt ourselves and use that essence, that true spirit, to use the peace of God that is within us for the machine's own perverted and wicked entertainment. Now, I'm sure some of you have heard terms like loosh harvesting and energy harvesting. Those are all very real and apparent circumstances that are happening. But they're happening because we allow it. Whether through formal consent, we have agreed to it, or informed consent, we are unaware as to why these things happen, but we have allowed ourselves to accept that they happen. And so that is a form of consent in itself. And now people will say things like, you know, the system feeds off this. This is how this construct is run and perpetuated. But there's so much more going on there as well. When we go down that rabbit hole of this is a construct, the machine is using us to power it, we are distancing ourselves from a more apparent truth, which is there's a spiritual battle going on. It's not simply to pervert us and it's entertaining to them, and that energy is used to perpetuate the machine. On a much deeper level, the purpose of that perversion, the purpose of creating those forms of entertainment with our consent or without it, it should be evident that it is because they are able to desecrate the peace of God that is within us. That essence, that glitch, that true spirit, that is what people call the divine spark. And much like the formula that is used by the machine's agents to fracture or split a human psyche, when you think about these conspiracy theories, these SRA reports, right? Ritual abuse, why these things are being done to children. The presence of that spark, I believe, is much stronger when we are children. And we are much more defenseless in that state. So it becomes easier to fragment it. It becomes easier to use that formula. And so much like that's being done on the micro level, on the macro level, that is the purpose of the suffering and the trauma. To pervert and desecrate the fragmented parts of God that are left. So the machine must convince us that there is no God. Right? This divine spark is a fragment of that, but it must convince us that there is no God. And the reason why it must convince us, we have to consent to lose that connection with that peace of God that is within us. Once we are convinced, once we are forced to have this conviction within that there is no God, then they are able to coerce us into being used or willingly conducting ourselves in ways which defile the peace of God that is within us. It has never been up to them. We have allowed it. We have allowed it because we have forgotten that there is a God and that the true spirit of God is within ourselves. So it's through this containment and manipulation of ourselves and our fragment of God that it continues to entertain itself. But again, another layer, yes, they are utilizing the energy and unseeable elements that are produced during our suffering, during our manipulation, during life's trials to further fuel the machine. Yes, they are coercing us to willingly accept this, to willingly drive us away from our connection to God, they are more than just energy harvesting. They are purposely desecrating God, getting us to allow that. But they are also using it as an experiment, as a study. Our enemy is a highly intelligent evil. And through these trials, through these experiences that are done for many reasons, one of them is also to study us. And the machine has studied us to a degree that it almost knows us better than we remember ourselves. There are those of us that have been abused to the point that we believe that the better we become at participating, at pleasing it, then the more we will see it is actually loving in nature. This is akin to a toxic romantic relationship that's riddled with domestic violence and abuse. And it has led us to a form of Stockholm syndrome. We have romanticized this process to the point of a ritualistic system of initiation for indoctrination in the ways of pleasing and feeding this machine. We willingly offer the servitude of not only ourselves, but even our children to this abuser. We will even go so far as to offer the flesh and divine spark of others around us to it in fear of displeasing our malevolent captor. Now, I'm sure many of us may have come to these conclusions. The studying and the mechanisms of control are so extreme and embedded and harsh that we can hardly even think about these type of things because thought police are real. I'm sure that when there was a time of being able to have free thoughts, we all contemplated scenarios or ideas of this nature. But again, through this pressure, we've had to force ourselves to just endure. So all of that leads to a question that has been asked forever. How do we change this? Hell, how do we end this? So, much like we look externally to the machine and willingly do what we have to do for the love, affection, and provision that the machine so carefully withholds from us unless we perform as it wishes. We are seeking that answer outside of ourselves. The truth, the power, the information that we are seeking is within ourselves. we have been willing to adapt our ideals and our actions to that of our external circumstances. Which again, those external circumstances, those experiences are being carefully crafted to ensure our continued service to the machine. We have let these outside lies of the machine have so much control over our perceptions, our beliefs, and we are unable to see the truth. And that truth has actually been laid out for us for so long. We look to the world for signs, direction, but the entire stage is rigged. Every bird and tree, every sound and sign, we're still looking outwardly for where to step and where to move, where to go next. That is the machine. Now, the answer to this question, the truth, again, that answer was given to us long ago, and hopefully another observation that we've been able to make or discern is that there is no distance in time and spirit. There is no distance. If you've been able to perceive that, that makes things much more interesting. But let's say, viewing time as linear with the beginning and the end, we should understand that we are being that where we are being directed is simply to the snake devouring its own tail. So we have to break that cycle. We have to break this cycle of abuse. We have to remove ourselves from the wheel. We have to stop dancing and performing for the machine. We have to stop looking for those cues and those signs external to us, because those are only moving us in the direction that the machine is pushing us toward. So we must be still. And so this is where it gets hard or difficult for some to accept the truth. So I'm going to paraphrase some scripture. Be still and know that I am God. So there are many axioms, many an adage of old that pertain to this. Another relevant saying is, as above, so below, as within, so without. So much like when we seek to change our health or our self-image, we have to remove toxic things from our lives. We have to change our diets to reshape our bodies. We have to alter our habits or behaviors to affect our well-being. And so in similar fashion, we must remove our focus and attention and allegiance from the machine. Now, that is quite a task in itself. We have seen what happens when we don't do what the machine asks us. And so that is comparable to when an individual begins to wean themselves from an addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, tobacco, anything like that. There are withdrawal symptoms. there's great discomfort and possibly even illness. We still must divorce ourselves from the abusive relationship that we have refused to separate from. And we must divorce ourselves from this for the sake of our future selves and for our children or loved ones. So the great danger that was, mentioned at the beginning of all this, it may well be the solution to the problem if we are unable to remove ourselves from this corruption of our divine spark. Now, I'm not beating around the bush. It's just, there are many paths that people are able to point toward in an attempt to guide others toward a truth. There are many different sayings and teachings, but that truth is elusive to those who are seeking instant gratification of this suffering and of the confusion. And they've all been said and heard before. To those who only want the answer, it will prove insufficient. It will not satisfy. It will be dismissed, and it will be given a head nod, maybe even brief consideration, but most likely they will choose to believe that it is unrealistic and is not the answer, is not the truth. Instead of digging in and utilizing this truth, instead of seeking this truth with all of your heart and mind, it's easier that we've convinced ourselves that we must make place for inherent darkness or wickedness, for lack of a better term or word. We must make place for inherent darkness or wickedness within ourselves and our lives. What that has done has caused a dual-mindedness within ourselves, within our homes, within our society. And this dual-mindedness is supposed to achieve some claimed form of balance in our existence. But again, using your skills of observation, it is clear that there is no balance. There is an imbalance. Now, some people will speak about integrating the shadow, doing things of that nature that brings this harmony or balance. Integration of a shadow does not mean that we allow the shadow to hold the wheel, the steering wheel. Integrating the shadow means to recognize its presence, to identify those aspects that are still us, but they are present with us throughout our act of living. It is not to allow the shadow to control the physical part, the physical aspect of you. So this dual-mindedness, it seems to be being pushed, right? A non-duality viewpoint. It seems to be being pushed as a form of passive consent. Like, hey, don't join this side or that side, because that's just choosing a side, and that's not reality. The reality is they're both there, and so the best thing to do is just do nothing. when it's clear again that there is no balance. It is completely imbalanced. The scales are tipped far to one side, and that is not well. And so, again, I'm going to go back to scripture. And I'm paraphrasing this, but in the scriptures it talks about an individual that is dual-minded is unstable in all their ways. And for many out there, they will argue this and say, once I learned to accept this, things got better. But they didn't get better. You just started getting rewarded by the machine for allowing that piece of God that is within you to be perverted. That piece of God, that sacred element that they cannot possess. So what better to do than to control it and manipulate it? And the holders of this element, who should be guarding this spark, we are willingly allowing it to be used and abused. And so when it speaks of the dual-mindedness in the scriptures, and it talks about how they're unstable in all their ways, but we seem to argue that, but we're only arguing it because we're receiving benefit from the machine that is punishing us. So we're like, no, it works out better when I'm dual-minded. That is untrue. It only stands to benefit the machine. In the scriptures, it also talks about a house divided. It says a house divided cannot stand. A nation divided cannot be a nation. In a very specific verse, I will quote this one in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. It speaks about being unable to serve two masters. No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money, or God and mammon, depending on the translation that you're reading. Now, again, I wasn't trying to beat around the bush about the truth, but once we begin to reach to that place, once we begin to give the truth from this source, again, there's immediate dismissal, there's immediate displeasure in that. And that should go to prove exactly what I just read, right? No one can serve two masters. You will either hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. So, we will attempt to hold a belief in an external God, and we will also participate in the abuse this machine is causing us and abuse others, right? And we will learn to love the reward that comes from the machine. And so then we begin to hate this external God, blaming it for the circumstances we're in, blaming it for the experiences we have to endure and for things that go on. But seeing the reward and the perk and the benefit of serving the machine master, we become devoted to the one and despise the other. And again, that's because the God that we are perceivably hating is not external to us. It is within us. And it is due to our failure to guard this spark that this situation we find ourselves in has been allowed to endure. And so, if we're able to consider that perspective, that outward hate for one master who we clearly have not been serving, it actually directs a lot of responsibility back to us. The pleasures, the love, the affection, the peace, all of those things that we seek externally but must obtain through this dual-mindedness, through the machines convincing us that pain is pleasure, that causing suffering is a necessary evil. That is all. You can find an example of that in the Stanford experiment. It's a pretty relevant and popularized experiment that was conducted. And they took a group of college students and they said, we're going to do an experiment. We're going to pretend like you guys are in prison. And some of you are going to be inmates and some of you are going to be guards. But they were all students. And when they conducted the experiment in these pretend roles, the legitimate abuse of authority and powers and of the inmates, they took place all on their own. They did it to themselves. In this pretend experiment, the guards chose to abuse their authority and harm the inmates. The inmates became, I don't want to say docile, but they allowed it to happen. They endured it. There was tensions, there was issues, there was great problems that arose from this experiment, and it was all pretend. And so, that truth to the answer, how do we change this? How do we stop this? How do we get off that? Well, we have to stop serving two masters. We have to realize that God is not external to us, hoping that we do things that benefit one side and not the other. That is still the same mechanism that is abusing us, playing both sides of the field. I'm a good guy, so I'm gonna go fight bad guys. Good job. Go hurt those bad guys. And then, hey, those good guys, they're not really good. The bad guys are good. So go hurt people for us. And it's the same entity. It's the same machine. Because the pain that we are causing one another, the trauma that we are causing one another is what feeds the machine. If you're able to take the perspective, the realization that the divine spark is within us, if we're able to take a look at the truth, which again may sound unpopular because of how far fallen our world has become, if we are able to take the truth that are within the teachings of Yeshua, we can have a better understanding that God is within us, and we have been failing our duty to protect this spark, to nurture this spark. There is not a being external to us that is coming to save us. We are supposed to be becoming we are supposed to be utilizing this divine spark, which is God within us, to affect the change, to protect one another, to do these works. We have people murdering other people for an external God, for an external Yeshua. We have people murdering other people because they receive perks and benefits from a machine, and that machine or those forces of darkness have convinced them that these external forces of light are actually evil, which is true. That is false light. They have us pitted against ourselves. If we, again, I'm paraphrasing right now, but if we take into account the example that Yeshua was, came to show us, came to do many things, came down to fulfill some things that needed to be fulfilled. All of this sacrifice, all of this blood sacrifice, that is what is required of the machine. That is what is required of the machine for it to continue to grow and thrive and operate. So Yeshua came to end that. Look, all these sacrifices, they mean nothing. They're not going to solve that problem. I have the answer to that. So Yeshua came to be the once and final ultimate sacrifice. There's nothing to dispute there after that. There's nothing to sacrifice to after that. Yeshua came to be an example, taking on the human form and enduring the temptations from our great enemy, enduring the suffering, the humanity that we endure. All the while showing us what it is we are capable of. Yeshua spoke words, paraphrasing again. He said, I am in the Father and the Father is in me, right? He knows the Father. The Father is in him and he is in the Father. And in another set of words, he says, you are in me, right? I am in you as you are in me. And so he's trying to express to you, you know, that popular saying, not of this world. Like, he's letting you know the kingdom of heaven is within. The Father is in me and I am in the Father, and you are in me and I am in you. Right? He is not external to you. The Father is not external to us. That spark, that divine, that divine spark, that essence, that piece, that fragment of God is within us. It is not an external entity to us. And he tried to further give us examples. So this is where the answer lies, right? If you can go in there and take the time to pay attention to what you're being told. Why are we reading these accounts? Why are these important? Because they're trying to give you the example. The blueprint is being given to you. Okay, it says, do not be conformed to the ways of this world, for the ways of this world are not my ways. Except we go, yeah, that's good. When I come on Sunday, I believe that. But when I go back to my life, I got to live. They are telling you that the ways of the world are not the correct ways. Yeshua showed one of his disciples, right, how to walk on water. Yeshua walked on water all the way to the boat. Blew their minds, scared them even. They were terrified. They were like, what? They thought it was something else. So then he also shows them an example of how they could walk on the water too. And during that example, the scripture says that the disciple took his eyes off of Yeshua and began to sink, began to fall into the water. And so Yeshua had to hold him up. Later on, Yeshua also states that, we will do greater works. He says, you will do greater works than I. So there's so many more, but again, you have to be willing to seek this. If you read it, and take it as a fictional story. If you read this and it leads you to believe in something, somebody, somewhere else that is going to come, then we are missing the information. We are missing the answer, the truth. We should be guarding our sacred hearts. We should be removing ourselves from these cycles of abuse, from this wheel, from this snake devouring its own tail. We should be removing ourselves from that. And we should be recognizing this power. What is walking on water? I mean, there's all kinds of things, right? That speaks of faith and different interpretations of what those words mean. But it was showing, it speaks to that magnificent power that Yeshua possessed to walk on water. He's literally defying the rules, the laws of gravity, right? He's defying the nature of this machine. And at the same time, he shows someone else how to do it. And that is what's left behind. Now, how do we distort that truth? How do we hide that truth? How do we, if it's so simple, then why? Because of all of the illusions, that the deception that the machine plays. There are parts of that truth that are just, they're indestructible. They cannot be removed. They cannot be refuted, but they can be misconstrued. They can be altered. They can be covered in misinformation. They can be surrounded by other things, other events, other experiences in the external world that would cause us to say, oh, well, that can't be the truth if this is happening. All the while, the key is right in front of us. The key has been there. Now, it's not as simple as just, okay, that's what I'm going to go do then. There are many aspects of that. Just like a diet. You can't go, well, I want to lose 20 pounds and tomorrow I'll be 20 pounds lighter. It takes effort. It takes effort to take back the steering wheel from this machine. It takes effort to step off of that wheel. It takes effort to seek the wisdom, the truth, those answers in the book and renew your mind. It takes effort. Especially when we have been so heavily groomed and indoctrinated into this ritualistic system that serves the machine. And the best of us, the most prominent of us, are the best at serving the machine. Being able to remove that confusion, being able to discern between the illusion, the mechanisms, the snares and the traps, that is a daily battle as well. It doesn't mean that everything gets perfect. Just as we wake daily and actively choose to participate with the system, we have to actively wake up daily and choose to refrain from consenting to this abuse. And that doesn't go without its issues, just like we spoke about earlier with withdrawal symptoms, just like, the time and effort that is put into reshaping your body, changing your diet, breaking bad habits. Those things take work and effort. And that is what it requires. It requires us to wake up daily without the intent to move on cue for the machine, but to renew our minds, to guard this sacred spark, to embody the example that Yeshua gave us. And while doing that, those that serve the machine, they will turn it up a notch. The machine will attempt to punish you back to the will. The machine will attempt to guide you back to the routine. Those that support the machine, those that are unwilling to seek the answer, to seek that truth, they are agents of the machine. And you will see the things that you have actively participated in being actively conducted against you. And again, that formula is beyond, our conscious choice. Like, I guess I'll do that. That formula that is used, that formula is so deeply infiltrated into every aspect of the machine, every aspect of the reality. It is embedded in your job, your workplace. It is embedded in the schools. It is embedded in our local governments. It is embedded even into outside of work, outside of school, outside of, these government agencies. It is embedded into our culture and society. It is in our groups of friends. It is in our homes. And so that danger that is afoot, it's coming to that head where we either decide to stay in perpetual servitude to this machine that we have lost so many brothers and sisters to. The spark is still there. The glitch is still here. But there have been so many of us that willingly relinquished it, willingly gave it away. If we keep continuing in the direction that the machine is guiding us, there will be nothing left for us to guard. This spark will find its way of eluding and evading the machine. It will always find its way to manifest through an individual. But for the sake of that fragment of God, for the sake of our duty to guard that divine spark, we need to reclaim what we have lost. We need to call it back and guard it with all of our heart. Not to entertain, not to perform, not to serve this machine. It deserves our love. It deserves our protection. It deserves our guarding. This experience, this sci-fi experience, this was a journey. And at one point in time, there were individuals that were protectors of this sacred pilgrimage, And now, we were supposed to be protecting that journey from robbers and thieves and bandits and scoundrels, murderers. And now this sacred journey is like, it's like a house of horrors. And the more horror you can cause, or the more horror you endure, is what shows that you are worthy of benefit, worthy of perks. We have to take that spark back. We have to do this first and foremost for that essence, for that true spirit. We have to do this for our loved ones and ourselves for the brief time that we have left. We have to stop looking outward for what is the right thing to do, and we also have to stop looking outward for the solution. It is within. We must renew our minds. We must remove this dual-mindedness. If we are the temple of God, because this is where God dwells, then a house divided cannot stand. And so it has to start within ourselves. And that obviously will spread to within our own homes. And the more that it spreads from ourselves to our homes, the more that it'll begin to spread through our neighborhoods, our communities, our cities, our workplaces, right? Our counties. It will begin to spread, but it requires us to start with ourselves. Looking at these external experiences, we say there's no way that is the answer. There's no way, because look at all of this stuff going on. So the only way to protect and defend and to make change is to do the same behavior that they're doing, that we are already doing, because that's going to fix things. That's incorrect. That's why we must seek that truth there, because then you'll come across scripture that lets you know, for our weapons are not carnal. Right? They are, depending on the translation, they are supernatural, they are spiritual, for the pulling down of strongholds. What we perceive to be normal is only because we have been groomed to perceive it that way. Look at something external and see that it is a reflection from something, right? Look at something bigger and see that it is a reflection of something smaller, or vice versa, right? As above, so below. The macrocosm and the microcosm. What is with, let's take a subject like sex trafficking. They get them young, they groom them, and then they are lost to that. Used, abused, murdered, broken. What is a smaller version of that? Well, let's implement it so subtly into our schools, into the way that we interact and behave with each other on a social level. We are the ones allowing it. We are the ones participating. We are the ones accepting this. It doesn't have to be this radical World War III event that causes change unless we allow it to go to that point. We have to take back authority of our minds. We have to take back our guardianship of this spark. And we have to watch those external experiences be unable to do anything about it once you remove that consent. We have been given authority and power to overcome every attack of the enemy, every power we're gonna trample on the adder and scorpions. I mean, this stuff is, the truth is there. The truth is there. But we don't know how to read the truth, or we don't want to take the time to read the truth. So guess where we're going to go? We're going to go somewhere external again. We're going to go to an external location and then let an external individual tell us what this means and how to use it. And that external environment, I mean, if you're lucky, you may find a place that are guardians of this truth, that are guardians of the spark. Or you may find another mechanism of this construct that is utilizing this truth, that is utilizing the power that is within our words to control you, to tell you how to apply this. You need to read it for yourself. You need to seek the truth for yourself. Yes, we will have questions. Yes, there are resources. There are individuals that are available to deal with certain things that you are lacking understanding on. But once you take back that spark, once you start guarding and nurturing that spark is given to us. That spark is entrusted to us to teach us, to comfort us, so that we are not required to seek those things external to ourselves. I hope for those of us that have maybe considered this answer, that we reconsider it. I hope for those of us that are just getting acquainted with these mechanisms, with this construct, I hope that this shortens the trouble that you have trying to seek an answer. Go to the source. Go to the source. One of the biggest issues with any type of truth is trying to explain it to somebody. What is in the truth is, it's not simply words. It's not simply a wording. It is what is within those words that makes that truth so powerful. There's a reason that book has held so much power. Now, human beings are fallible. We make mistakes and we are corruptible. Sometimes we lack the ability to express the deeper meaning of that truth, to express the power that is within that truth. Sometimes human beings purposely misuse the power that is within those words. So getting to that answer sometimes seems difficult, but that's why there's different translations of that truth. There are some that are written in a more plain and simple manner. Be discerning. Be discerning. Use your intuition. Be still. Search for that truth. Because right now, we need this. Right now, we need this. And there's going to be withdrawals, trust me. That is Think of it this way. Those experiences that are going to pop up as you begin to seek the truth and try to apply it to your way of living so that you can remove yourself from this will, think of it this way. That's a reflection of the system. That's a reflection of the machine. When you are being hated, when you are being called weak or any other tactic that is employed against those who are seeking the truth or living in their truth, that is not because of what you are doing. That is the reaction of the system. That is the tantrum that the system is throwing because it cannot get what it has been getting from you. This is a lot longer than I expected it to be. I'll be much more concise on the next episodes, but bear with me. It's the first episode and I'm working out the kinks. I really thank you guys for listening. I truly hope this reaches somebody. I don't have the answer. The answer has always been there. I take no credit for any of this. If there's anybody that would like to discuss these matters or has useful information, topics and things that you would like to hear or possibly interact about, please email us. I have an Instagram. The Instagram is One Big Fam Collective. So short for family. One Big Family, but it's One Big Fam Collective. And that's at Instagram. You can check out some of my poems and lyrics there of a similar topic. So just reach out. I thank you guys. I love you. Be well. Stop giving up your consent to these external things. And please, please go and look for yourself. Go and seek that truth for yourself. Goodbye.